Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Joel Moran Show. What a thriller we just saw on Monday Night Football. The Steelers beat the Browns 26-22. John is with me wearing the Steelers jersey. Now, before you go, John, because I know you're really excited, just got to say one thing. Prayers out to Nick Chubb. He got injured today. He is going to be out for the season. Hope he's okay. Prayers out to him. Really unfortunate what happened to him. We never want to see that happen to anybody. But on to the game. Steelers 21 straight home wins on Monday Night Football. They have the most Monday Night Football wins in the history of Monday Night Football. How are you feeling after this game?
I'm feeling like I just went through a breakup. That's how every Steelers game feels like as a fan. It was an emotional roller coaster. I mean, there's no other way to put it. The Nick Chubb injury was heartbreaking, even as a Steeler fan, to watch. And so, as a player, that affects you. The Browns still came back, rebounded, go on a score and drive, get a 2-point conversion, and they handed this game to make it a thriller to me. But as a Steeler fan, I came away so happy about our defense, and yet equally disappointed about our offense. And that's been the story of this team, Joel, for the last 2.5, 3 years.
Oh my goodness. I have some stats about the Steelers offense that are hilarious. So 8 of the Steelers drives ended in a punt or a turnover. The offensive touchdown the Steelers scored was the Kenny Pickett to George Pickens, and Pickens took it to the house, 71 yards, a house call. And Pickett stood strong in the pocket, made a great throw, really great moxie from him on that play. Now, they scored 2 field goals. One of those field goals, a punt return, put them in field goal range. And the first drive of the second half, Kenny Pickett made some good passes. The running game was working, and they kicked the field goal on that specific drive. So all in all, offensively, they had a touchdown, 2 field goals. But after that drive in the second half, the first drive they had in the second half, where they kicked the field goal, they punted on every single drive after that. The offense was abysmal, but it's going to be masked by how great the defense played tonight. It's as simple as that.
Another stat, the Steelers are going into the second quarter. They have -3 rushing yards, and the Browns have 72. So the Browns today nearly quadruple the Steelers on the ground, 198 rushing yards to 55. And I think the number one place, dude, it's Najee Harris. He's had some good runs through the first 2 weeks that have masked his inconsistencies. His vision has largely not been there. And the few moments where it has, he has not been powerful enough. He has not been elusive enough. And his calling card coming out of Alabama was a well-balanced back with a good amount of power, a good amount of elusiveness, a good amount of vision. But some of those things have been pretty big problems now. Jalen Moran comes in, you're immediately gaining that elusiveness, and he's making more defenders miss. So our number one running back is inefficient. Kenny Pickett is then missing easy ones on first and second down. So it's setting up the Steelers offense consistently at 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. And unfortunately, Matt Canada he's not a good play caller. So Kenny Pickett now is looking at 4 verticals and shots down the field, oftentimes that are not open. So this entire recipe is a disaster, dude, because you stack on top of that this Browns defense. Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, who got banged up. I believe he came back, and Abanyo Kawakro. All of the pressure the Browns are generating was only putting more pressure on KP to where he's hurting his shoulder or his chest in the late point of the first half. And I'm saying to myself, the Steelers just have no confidence in this offense. You felt it when they get the ball back, 55 seconds left. Browns just scored. And instead of actually trying to get a field goal range, end up 3 points, couldn't mojo go in the first half, they don't even call a single timeout, don't even try to score. Because they're like, we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. Let's just get out of here with both our legs and we'll be healthy, so to speak. And as a Steeler fan, it's really a conservative, soft play style to me, and I can't stand it. It's only exacerbated by the turnovers, too, because Kenny Pickett, first interception in the last week was a terrible, terrible read. And then again, this week, you're seeing that same exact mistake. It feels like we've seen zero progress with that offense. And when you have that same exact issue every single year, the defense is going to see more of these injuries because they're on the field for like 35 to 37 minutes. Today, 36. So Minka Fitzpatrick gets injured. Cam Hayward's on IR. DeMarvin Leal, the Cam Hayward replacement, was injured as well. It's just not going to sustain itself here.
I'm a fan of a team that has shown me bland offense since I've been alive. I understand the feeling all too well when your team runs on first down, runs on second down, is in an obvious passing situation on third and long. That's not a recipe for a young quarterback to succeed. Kenny Pickett has his deficiencies. I feel like in the quick game, he could be more decisive. He tends to put balls behind receivers when he throws to them. He occasionally makes a good play, but right now, I think his biggest issue is playing within structure, playing within the pocket. Well, with that being said, when you're putting him in situations third and 8 or longer, I mean, what is he supposed to do? That's a disaster. And to hit on the point about Matt Canada, the Steelers ran on first and 10 or second and 8 53% of the time. This is a stat from Sharp Football. Shout out to Warren Sharp. This is despite the fact that he's running into loaded boxes on 54% of these snaps. Running back runs on these downs 12 rushes, 3.8 yards per carry, negative 0.28 EPA per rush, 33% success rate. These runs, like you're mentioning, they're not being successful, but there is no change of direction to the offense. It seems like every week this is the game plan, and Matt Canada continues to stick with it. For all the great things about Mike Tomlin, the way he's managed this play calling role has been really bad. And to me, we talked about Steelers offense, but what I really want to hit on is the turnovers that the Browns had in this game. First off, this game started off with a freaking bang. Deshaun Watson throws a pick six the very first play, whether it was on him or Harrison Bryant, whatever. I'm not a big fan of Harrison Bryant. I don't think he's that good. But this was the first quarter. Interception, touchdown, a field goal, interception by the Steelers, a missed field goal by the Browns, a punt by the Steelers, a fumble by the Browns, and a fumble by the Steelers. This was all in the first quarter. For me, though, the Browns turnovers were just too much to overcome. They had 4 turnovers on the game. The pick six that Deshaun Watson threw. Then later on in the first quarter, Deshaun Watson, QB sneaks it on 4th and 1. He fumbles. Then in the fourth quarter, they had 2 very costly turnovers. David Njoku, after catching a pass from Deshaun, he fumbles at midfield. That was looking like a good drive for Cleveland. And then Deshaun Watson getting sacked by Alex Highsmith. TJ Watson picks it up, scoops and score, takes it to the house. I mean, that had to be a thrill for you watching. This defense, 100%, is the reason you guys got this win. TJ Watt, listen, if he's not the best defender in the world, he's number 2. To me, Defensive Player of the Year is between Micah Parsons and TJ Watt. But TJ Watt's footprint was all over this game, and they lined him up in different places. He was against DeJuan Jones. They lined him up at guard. They were really toying with the Browns' offensive line and making them really worry about these stunts.
The versatility is one thing. The clutch gene is another. TJ Watt historically has been a guy that gets to the quarterback late in the fourth quarter and in overtime. And he actually scored his first touchdown of his career today, too. That's what they said in the post-game report. To talk about specifically the Browns offense, it did feel like yet another game for Deshaun Watson where the issue was inaccuracy, bad ball placement, and then he's getting pressure all the time. This is going to be a consistent theme. You have DeJuan Jones, who's got upside, but he's a rookie, and Jedrick Wills, he still had some of those ebbs and flows in pass protection as well. So, unfortunately, we don't know what is going to happen with Nick Chubb. You hope he's back on the field soon remotely, but they're going to have to move forward expecting more of Deshaun. I felt like the play call in this game wasn't creative enough against a Steelers secondary that it's not very good. Levi Wallace struggles in run defense. He's giving up big time plays, getting shredded in zone coverage, and they're not really using Joey Porter a whole lot. That's their first round pick. Minka Fitzpatrick leaves the game. You've already lost a starter from last year. The guy Elijah Riley, who was on the practice squad, getting meaningful reps in the fourth quarter. That is where Deshaun Watson has to hit those shots consistently. But it feels a little bit few and far between now with him and Amari Cooper, where you can continue to get that connection to grow. That is the number one thing that I have with the Browns now. Nick Chubb was supposed to be the engine of this offense, and I felt like while Jerome Ford was amazing today, that 65-some-odd yard run, a lot of that was just really poor by Levi Wallace not staying in his gap. And I don't know if that's going to sustain moving forward. So the more you look at this team's chances of winning the AC North, the more it depends on Watson getting to right back into rhythm.
And this loss, if you're a Browns fan, not only is demoralizing because you were favorites coming into this game, but you lose Nick Chubb for the season. Zadarius Smith gets hurt. Greg Newsome gets hurt. I mean, those are three of your best players, and Nick Chubb is irreplaceable. The only way I can see them matching that production is going out and trading for Jonathan Taylor and picking up the phone and calling the Colts. That's really it. But Deshaun Watson, this game, after Nick Chubb left, he wasn't even the best offensive player. It was Jerome Ford with 16 carries, 106 yards. And I thought I saw a lot of bursts from Jerome Ford. I liked him back at Cincinnati. He played well. The play that Minka got injured on, he chased Jerome Ford down, and that's when he banged his chest, and now he's injured because of a chest injury. But for me, you're absolutely right about Deshaun Watson. 22 for 40, completed 55% of his passes, 235 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 2 fumbles. So 3 total turnovers on this game, holding on to the ball, taking sacks, inaccurate, indecisiveness. This is not the same Deshaun Watson that we've seen. And, I saw this tweet and I just had to reiterate this on the show, but it really feels like Deshaun Watson didn't pick up a football in the entire year that he was absent from football. That's how he looks right now. When is the last time we've seen a superstar quarterback completely stink it up for the first 8 games in his return and then be completely fine after that? If you're a Browns fan, if you're the Browns management, you have to be looking at this as one of the worst mistakes that your franchise, that any team in the NFL has ever made. That's how bad Deshaun Watson is. You guaranteed him a fully guaranteed contract. This is your quarterback. And when you had a chance at the end of the game to go on a drive for Deshaun Watson and have a game-winning drive, he folded. And for me, if I'm a Browns fan, this loss feels demoralizing because it kind of just stamps and cements for me that Deshaun Watson really might not be that good, bro.
It could be the worst move in NFL history because of the level of expectations you place on that price tag and the return. Joel, they give 3 straight first round picks, dude. And Deshaun Watson can't complete 60% of his passes. The only quarterback that's had something remotely similar would be Carson Wentz, but he still returns the following year and leads him to the playoffs. And then he suffers a concussion the year after. He's completely fallen apart when his offensive line is a new lineup every single week. So the Carson Wentz situation is isolated. The Deshaun Watson situation is totally isolated because he has been given all the personnel to support. The only question and the only qualm you could possibly have is Bill O'Brien was a good coach in Houston, a bad GM. Kevin Stefenski, should he be on the hot seat? Is he part of the problem here? Is the play calling creative enough for this offensive mind who won coach of the year in his first year in Cleveland?
Stefanski, to me, is an overrated head coach. And if anybody here is watching and listening has heard me talk about Stefanski, I've constantly reiterated that I'm not a fan of Stefanski. In 2020, when Baker Mayfield and the Browns offense was a top 10 unit, they made the playoffs and they won a playoff game. It was a very good offense. And next year, they drop off in 2021. And I was struggling to understand why. Because in 2020, Baker Mayfield was the most successful under center and in 12 personnel, meaning 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers on the field. In 2021, Kevin Stefanski completely abandoned that play style. I mean, it was more snaps out of shotgun. It was less personnel lineups in 12 personnel, was more 11 personnel. The offense was more spread. Kevin Stefanski was actively playing to Baker Mayfield's weaknesses the very next year. And then, of course, you could say that Stefanski had somewhat of a rival when Jacoby Brissett played well with him. But then Deshaun Watson comes back. You try to make the offense more 11 personnel, more snaps out of shotgun. And then you realize Deshaun Watson is not that same quarterback. But the thing is that I look at the Browns offense, and this is just going to summarize my point about Kevin Stefanski. I don't see enough creativity from the offense. I don't see rub routes, trying to free up receivers. I don't see quick game concepts, just those easy buttons that we see coaches like Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay, they hit with their offenses. With Kevin Stefanski, it's very Nick Chubb reliant. And then even when Nick Chubb went out, it felt like it was the same game plan, but we're just going to put in Jerome Ford in there and hopefully he has the same impact. To me, Kevin Stefanski, like, he has not made the game easier for Deshaun Watson because ideally you would want Stefanski to call plays and formations similar for Watson that he did for Brissett, just to ease him back into things because he wasn't asking Jacoby to do a whole lot either. So for me, Deshaun Watson has been bad. There is no doubt. But I don't think Stefanski has made Deshaun's life any easier. And he's most certainly in the hot seat after 2020 making the playoffs, completely abandoning the strengths of Baker Mayfield, and now trading for a star quarterback who you can't even get back to 50% of what he once was.
It's pretty crazy because the Browns have done such a good job through the year scouting and finding talent. I mean, they've given up their first round picks and found great value. Martin Emerson, the secondary, Grant Delpit's taken a big step forward. Even the linebacker play, JOK. Offensively, Elijah Moore could be a big time piece. You're seeing that upside. And they got Zadarius Smith for a 5th round pick. So the Browns have basically hit on every single move. Gain Amari Cooper for a 5th round pick. Chase Claypool is traded for a 1st. And I think, honestly, he's 2 times worse than Amari Cooper now because he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. So you've done everything right. But the fact that Baker Mayfield has been significantly better in Tampa Bay with Dave Canales, a second-year offensive coordinator, than Deshaun Watson. Think about it this way. Baker Mayfield so far this year through 2 weeks, 69% completion percentage, 3 TDs, 0 interceptions. Deshaun Watson, 55% completion percentage, 3 turnovers. And in today's game, he had his 2nd touchdown of the season. You look at the coaching between these two teams, and I'm like, there's not a big gap here. If anything, Cleveland has more pedigree, and there's an established commodity here. And yet, Baker Mayfield has continued to show just how stable he was. He was injured in that 2020 campaign. 2021, or the other way around, 2021, he was hurt. 2022 was a chaotic, turbulent year. It's like, man, it's so hard to find a quarterback in today's NFL. And I guess that's what leads you to this round circle topic of Kenny Pickett here at the Steelers. 30% of teams that take quarterbacks in the first round end up hitting. And even within that group, you have guys like Jared Goff and so many other mid-tier quarterbacks who end up disappointing you in one way or the other. It's almost an impossible game, and the Browns are finding that out here yet again.
You know, the Buccaneers, you mentioned Dave Canales, the new offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. Last year was Byron Leftwich. People do not know this, but Baker Mayfield chose Tampa Bay because he had a sit-down conversation with Dave Canales, and Dave Canales told him, we want to play this offense to your strengths. We want to create this offense to your strengths. And you're seeing a lot of that design within their offense. It's a lot of stuff under center, rolling out the pocket, getting Baker Mayfield comfortable. Dave Canales last year was the quarterback's coach for a team that had a journeyman career quarterback that suddenly revived his career. And now we talk about him like he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, in Geno Smith. Dave Canales was a quarterback's coach for Seattle, and Geno Smith has credited him for his development and said he had a huge part in that process. So although Dave Canales is a first-time offense coordinator, he has a history. Well, he has the history with Geno Smith in working with him, and he definitely had a part in Geno Smith's revival. Now, on 3rd and 4th down situations, the Browns were 5 for 18 in this game. To me, it speaks to Deshaun Watson because, I mean, those are obvious passing downs outside of 4th down. 3rd down, obvious passing downs, they were 5 for 16. That speaks to Deshaun. That speaks to Stefanski. To me, though, like, Stefanski has done less with more than any coach currently in the NFL. We're talking about one of the better offensive lines. We're talking about a plus receiving group. It's definitely not one of the worst. We're talking about a plus tight end room with David Njoku. He's great. We're talking about arguably the best running back in the room when they had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. He has done less. He has done less with more. And that's why I'm low on Kevin Stefenski. Now, John, I want to ask you this because Nick Chubb got injured, and that leaves a big hole in the Browns offense, especially the rushing attack, because I don't know how long they're going to be relying on Jerome Ford for. If you're the Browns, there's two clear running backs on the trade market. It's Jonathan Taylor and it's Cam Akers. Given how Cam Akers has fallen out with Sean McVay, I wouldn't go that route. But then they can go the free agent route and bring back somebody in Kareem Hunt who knows the playbook. Given where the Browns are right now, they just guaranteed a quarterback that doesn't look like even half himself, $235 million. Should they go all in and trade for Jonathan Taylor?
Depends what you're talking about here. You're getting a second round pick, or you're giving up a second round pick, or do you have to give up a top 32 pick when you already don't have your own this year? If I can get JT for a second rounder, I'd do it in a heartbeat if I'm Cleveland, because in today's NFL, the best way to go about it, Nick Chubb's been the most reliable running back in the NFL. But the devastation of that left knee, a second time, just a terrible injury, does make you evaluate, can we build out a running back room of 2 or 3 guys, a committee approach? Because that's what keeps these running backs healthy the most. That's what helped Chubb for so many years. He wasn't getting 400 touches, 350. He was getting 200, 250, and that helped him with Kareem Hunt when he was pretty good. I would say yes, Joel, but it cannot be for another first-round pick, because then we got to pay Jonathan Taylor. And you start to realize, well, we've already committed so much money to Deshaun Watson. There's not that much to go around here, especially with that young defense, which it's so good, it's going to be a larger priority than that running back group. It simply will have to be.
It just sucks for Cleveland that, I mean, after week 1, after dominating the Bengals, we're talking about them. Oh, maybe they can come out the AFC. Maybe they're winning the AFC North. Well, there's one team in the AFC North right now that's 2-0. That's the Baltimore Ravens. The Browns, Deshaun Watson doesn't look like himself. The defense is now getting injuries with Newsome and Zadarius Smith. The offense, Nick Chubb is a big blow. It just feels like everything is falling apart for Cleveland right now. And even before the game, we saw a video, the broadcast showed a video of Deshaun Watson meditating before the game. And that to me leads me to just assume that Deshaun Watson is still very in his head about the game. I don't know if that was a pregame routine he's done since forever, but just that's my assumption off of that moment that I saw on the broadcast.
I find it interesting, the visualization element, especially for a quarterback, but you're all right. I mean, to have everything that Deshaun Watson did off the field spill into your personal career, then you're given everything so easily. If everything handed to you, you get to go to the perfect team. You're playing in cold Cleveland, boo you. But guess what? You just got $250 million guaranteed to you. Half of that will be taken out by taxes, of course. But the point is, he sat out an entire year, would have almost been suspended, and then he doesn't have to work for that, because Sonny did years before. And then you go to a new offense with a new environment. You have so much criticism, totally rightfully. You deserve it. And now you're expected to lead Cleveland to the Super Bowl. And inherently, this offense has been a bit chaotic. And they try to put Deshaun, the minute he comes back, week 11 versus former team, and say, all right, go out there and sling for 400 yards. And that Texans defense comes to play because they want to show out it's the biggest, it's their Super Bowl. And for Deshaun Watson, he hasn't played football in 2 years, almost 2.5 if I'm not wrong. And there's so much expectations. You're given everything. It's a position you've never been in before. You're expected to be the man. And yeah, I do think totally there is a mental component of quarterback that you have to consistently bring to the table, that short-term memory loss. I don't know if Deshaun Watson still has that. Plus, Joel, I think Bill O'Brien is a really underrated head coach with what he's
Me
done.
too.
We've seen it. And again, in Houston, they're winning 9 games every single year with the likes of Tom Savage and a variety of others at quarterback with a great defense. So Deshaun Watson had structure in Houston with DeAndre Hopkins. But now it's so much change and so much expectations being placed on his shoulders. Yeah, I can totally see it.
And that year that Deshaun passed for over 4,000 yards, nearly 5,000 in 2020 with Bill O'Brien. I mean, looking back on that year, they didn't have much offensive weapons. Look at this year with the Patriots. Tell me a notable offensive weapon there, and Mac Jones has played awesome the first 2 games, even with the limited supporting cast. So you're absolutely right. I think Bill O'Brien has been underrated. Moving on to the next game. That was the first game on a Monday Night Football slate. Just want to say this for all of those watching that probably hate the double header Monday Night Football games. After next week, we don't have to deal with it for a while. So just letting you guys know, because I don't like this. I like to focus on one game, but we got two. And this is the Saints and Panthers. Saints beat the Panthers 20-17. This score is not an indication on how close the game actually was. This felt like the Saints controlled the game the entire time. Really a defensive battle. It was 6-3 at halftime, but some notable stats. The Saints start 2-0 for the first time since 2013. The Saints defense has also given up 20 or fewer points in 10 straight games for the first time in franchise history. The last time that happened, the last time it was close to happening was 2013. Dome Patrol, which is what they call the Saints defense that year, had 9 straight games of holding opponents under 20 points. These are the opponents for context. In 2022, the Steelers, Rams, 49ers, Buccaneers, Falcons, Browns, Eagles with Gardner Minshew, and the Panthers. 2023, the Titans and the Panthers.
There's never been an incredible stat I've been less moved by. Look, this Saints defense lost a lot all season. Daniel Namada, Shai Tuttle, a variety of pieces on the defensive line.
They're still great, though.
Regression. The thing is, you look at their matchups, the Titans, they're barely giving the ball to Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill, throwing 3 interceptions, throwing balls in double coverage, making really bad decisions. Not the consistent version of Tannehill we saw years ago. And then you look at the Panthers. Yeah, that is far and away the worst receiving core. Worse than New England, because at least the Patriots have like plus tight ends and plus running backs. Miles Sanders, the mini Elise Philadelphia. 14 carries, 43 yards. The offensive line that was really good last year taking a slight step back. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I didn't get to watch this entire game. But what I do know is Bryce Young finishes 22 of 33, 153 yards. He's not playing particularly well with good coaching. And I think it's pretty clear he's in year 1 of 4 now. The Panthers have 3 years in the draft to get him good, explosive wide receiver talent, which he didn't have that last year at Alabama. If you can get him one of those guys, they thought they got one in Jonathan Mingo. He is a raw project that's going to need some seasoning and time to grow. This could be an explosive team with a great defense. But even then, that defense has suffered injuries. And look, I had the Panthers as a sneaky playoff team. I had them win 8 to 9 games. I thought them and the Falcons were going to be the top 2 teams in this division. It's hard to predict J.C. Horn going IR. It's also pretty hard to forecast just how bad this wide receiver room is. No one gets separate on the perimeter. There's no run after the catch ability. And even then, the offensive line to me, I thought it was going to be a clear strength, and none of it has been so far. The good news is they've got the coaching. As for the Saints team, though, they start off 2-0. In this division, you really just need 9 wins, maybe 10 if the Falcons take that step forward defensively. But I do want to credit that Saints weapon room. Michael Thomas has barely played the last 3 years. But that trio of Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Michael Thomas, that X-weapon, is one of the best in the NFL. Juwan Johnson's received some hype. He's been pretty quiet the first couple of weeks. It's just the fact
he's a 4th option, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people are expecting that touchdown production, so to speak. Today, 2 catches for 13 yards. You get a bit of everything, though, with that group. Shaheed is his big-time playmaker. Thomas is reliable. And Chris Olave continues to show up down the stretch. Derek Carr has all of it. And so I'm kind of a little bit underwhelmed here. He didn't have a great game today. And I'm not surprised because I felt like this offseason, Derek Carr is a very lateral move for the Saints. He'll win you some games the regular season, but I no longer feel like he is that quarterback that can will you to the playoffs in that isolated season. To me, the Saints need to find a solution here at quarterback long term. The moment they do, these weapons can shine through.
Listen, when you talked about the Panthers, I'll give you some credit on some of the things you said. I am very surprised that their offensive line dropped off in the way that it did. Last year, it was one of the better units, and now it looks like a liability. Far too much. Secondary injuries to the secondary. You're right. J.C. Horn, Shaq Thompson got injured in this game. He's going to be out for a while, and that's a big blow to the linebacker room. I think we could have forecasted how bad this receiver room was, though. Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Terrace Marshall, Mingo.
To me, I've always been a DJ guy.
To me, it was obvious. I think my miss was thinking that they were actually going to be better than Tampa Bay. and Tampa Bay so far looks decent, 2-0 start, but I'm not moved by their 2-0 start either, to be fair. The Panthers didn't get anything going in this game until the very last drive of the game. That's when they had their touchdown. Before that, it was 20-10, I believe, or no, it was 20-9. Before that, they had 3 field goals. So that was the first touchdown of the game. And that was because the Saints were playing soft zone. They were playing back, and Bryce Young was just able to dice them up for short completions, and he just went down the field and marched on down the field for a touchdown. But the Panthers didn't get anything going offensively. Frank Reich, in the first couple of weeks in the season, and this dates back to his time as a head coach with the Colts, is not very good. It's not until after week 5 where he starts to figure out his personnel, and now you see more explosive plays on the offensive side of the football. The Panthers defense, I've been a big fan of them for a while, and they've always had a lot of talent, even back when Teddy Bridgewater was their quarterback and he got 1,000-yard seasons out of DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. I've always been a big fan of this defense, and a lot of pieces on it are younger. They got better. Derek Brown, Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin, JC Hornets. Unfortunately, he got injured. I've always been a big fan of Shaq Thompson. He's been a steady piece in that middle. Frankie Louvu has come on as one of the more impactful players at his position in the league. This guy is underrated. He's if you know ball, you know him kind of player. And Dante Jackson on the outside. I love this defense. They're fast. And they were pressuring Derek Carr all game long. And they were able to stop the run. The Saints averaged 2.95 yards per carry on running back runs. They got torched when Taysom Hill carried the ball. He averaged 8 yards per carry. But in the first half, these are the notes I had on them. The Panthers punted 3 times. Then Granderson sacks Bryce Young. It's a strip sack. He gets the fumble. The Saints offense wasn't very good in the first half. A punt, 2 field goals, a punt, an interception that Derek Carr threw that was egregious, and another punt. It was 6-3 at halftime. To me, the reason why I agree with you in saying that getting Derek Carr was a lateral move, I do think Derek Carr on a year-to-year basis is more consistent and a better quarterback than Andy Dalton. But 2022 Andy Dalton compared to 2022 Derek Carr, Andy Dalton was a better quarterback. And Derek Carr's biggest deficiency in his game, and this just wasn't a last year thing, it's been a problem his entire career, is in the red zone. Last year, Derek Carr was by far the worst red zone quarterback in the NFL. He completed 33% of his passes inside the red zone. Average is like 50%. Like, Derek Carr is so at the bottom that I think the Saints are starting to realize just how bad he is, because Derek Carr was able to get into the red zone 2 times in the first half. He went 2 for 5 on those passes, completing 40% of his passes. And then in the second half, the Saints got 2 red zone drives. It was one in the third quarter. You got a Taysom Hill pass to Jawan Johnson, and then 3 straight Tony Jones runs. Derek Carr did not attempt a pass in the red zone in that third quarter red zone drive. And then in the fourth quarter red zone drive, pass to Olave for a touchdown was reversed, but it was a screenplay. Olave really did all the work. Then a Taysom Hill run, then a Tony Jones run for a touchdown. So when they were inside the red zone, the Saints basically just said, we're abandoning passing the ball with Derek Carr at all costs. To be fair, those red zone drives were made possible by the long Chris Olave catch on 3rd and 7. And then on 3rd and 11, I believe the 43-yard pass to Shaheed on the second red zone drive. But to me, there are just some clear deficiencies with Derek Carr that if he had a great offensive line in front of him, I would feel better about the Saints situation. But the truth about the Saints is that they don't have a good offensive line. They have a bad offensive line. They're not able to generate rushes, efficient rushes with their running backs. Alvin Kamara, some will say he will change it, but last year with Kamara, they weren't a good rushing football team. And to me, the defensive line has kind of gotten a easy going with the Titans offensive line and the Panthers offensive line. So to me, the Saints are 2-0, but this doesn't feel like a real 2-0. And with all respect to Carr, he did say, we got a lot of things to fix. but it's better to fix them being 2-0 than 1-1 or 0-2. So I understand that. But the Saints, to me, being in this type of dogfight with the Panthers, to me, was kind of worrying.
No doubt. I think what Derek Carr then drives me crazy is the timid movement in the pocket, the uncertainty on third down. He doesn't deliver with much confidence, I feel like. And last year lost so much of that working with Josh McDaniels. And so for the Saints team, some will say Alvin Kamara comes back and boom, our problems are solved. Are you sure about that? Going to year 7 last year was the least efficient season of his career. We're looking at a guy that's perennially been at the top of the league in touches. I do not think Alvin Kamara is that same running back. Just losing that explosiveness the same way any guy does when he hits that age. And ultimately for the Saints team, they're going to have to continue winning with that explosive passing down the fields. And when you look at this division, you've got to play this Falcons team. They're going to beat you and turn out the clock on the ground. They're going to play their own way. And I think their identity is much more established than the Saints' own. The Saints are still trying to figure out who they are as a team. When they play the Falcons, they may get ran all over. And then you play the Buccaneers, who are red hot, playing with confidence. And I'm not going to say I'm balanced that rushing attack. It's probably the worst in this division, by far one of the worst in the NFL. But I do like that Buccaneers pass attack more with Baker Mayfield and rhythm and that weapon duo.
Oh no,
And the
John.
Saints. Does that sound crazy?
You sound
their
crazy
passing?
now.
With their coaching? With how
Listen,
well
listen, listen. I think the clear two teams in this division are the Falcons and the Saints to win the division. I think the Buccaneers come in third place. I'm really happy for Baker Mayfield. I just want to say that. I hope that he does prove me wrong and he goes to the playoffs, because I'm happy if he does, because I felt like how he got treated in Cleveland was uncalled for. And it was a slap in the face to him for what he brought to that city. Granted, he's not the best quarterback, but I mean, listen, he still brought them success, and how they did him, how he played through an injury, and then they just traded him like nothing. I didn't appreciate that. And that's why, for me, the Browns, anything that they have coming to them when in terms of this Deshaun Watson debacle, I think they deserve with how the things shaked out with Baker Mayfield. But I think the offensive line for the Buccaneers is still a problem. Baker Mayfield taking shotgun snaps is still a problem. The defense, it's okay, but it's nothing. It's nothing special. The Falcons, to me, are the team that understand their identity. They've added a bunch of defensive pieces, and you know how they're going to play. And Desmond Ridder, for every 3 good decisions, he makes like 5 bad ones. But I think as we go further into the season, that will be closer to like 3 good decisions, 2 bad decisions, and hopefully he can figure out the decision making, because, oh my goodness, Jair Alexander dropped an easy pick 6. Quay Walker dropped an interception. I mean, there were so many moments that defenders could have capitalized on, just horrible Ritter passes. I think he had like 4 or 5 turnover worthy plays from what I watched when I was watching back the game. I want to talk to you about this, though. I want to talk to you about Bryce Young, because we see CJ Stroud having success in Houston, Anthony Richardson having success with Indianapolis. And then there's Bryce Young, where maybe we overvalued the coaching aspect of things. The offensive line doesn't look very good. The receiving core is not very good. But with all those things considered, I do think he played well in this game. Dennis Allen was sending a ton of looks to try to confuse him, manufacturing pressure. He would have 6 at the line, then drop defenders back into coverage. I mean, if you're dropping 7 into coverage and rushing 4 and able to get home with 4, Bryce Young, as it currently stands, doesn't have receivers that can separate one-on-one. Now, when we're talking about 7-on-4, it makes it that much tougher. And Bryce Young, he stayed patient. The pocket movement, to me, still stands out for Bryce. He throws some really nice balls to the middle of the field that some receivers didn't hold on to. Bryce Young, to me, yeah, there were some inaccurate throws while he was playing, but to me, he's really looked good. He's looked good. In the first game, he had those 2 bad interceptions to Jesse Bates. But this game against the Saints, I looked at it and I said, this is a good quarterback. This guy's not the reason why they're losing like this.
I'm not worried. This week he did have 1 fumble, but generally you want to see him just take care of the ball in this offense. Can he be as close to mistake-free as a rookie? That's the first step. And then the moment the Panthers' rushing attack gets established, that's where they can surprise you with a deep shot down the field. His rookie year is not going to be a particularly pretty one. And I feel like we saw that with Trevor Lawrence, where Lawrence had no coaching, didn't have great weaponry. With this Panthers team, they have a good coach, but zero weapons. And so it's probably going to be a very up and down season. That being said, I want to give him a full 2 or 3 years to fully give him a real chance to be evaluated. Because it's pretty hard when you've got Adam Thielen as your number one at 33 years old, your number 2 wide receiver, Hayden Hurst, DJ Shark. There's really, and Chuba Hubbard, there's really nothing for him to work with.
Yeah, I admired the way that Bryce Young fought through this game, getting hit constantly, evading pressure, defenders covering all of your receivers like glue. There was nothing open down the field. To me, I really admired how he fought in this game. It showed a lot about him as a player, and I think he'll be fine in the long run. It's definitely not time to worry. And I know that we're in this age where everything is compared. So it's like, oh, Bryce Young, well, he isn't as good as Stroud, though, or Anthony Richardson right now. And it's just like, I mean, listen, we're evaluating them as individual players right now. It's their rookie season. And for Bryce Young, all things considered within how that offense is structured right now, I think he's doing more than a fine job manning that offense and quarterbacking that offense right now.
And he's best out of structure. The moment you get guys who can create when plays break down, the better that playmaking is going to show through and shine. That's what made him better than CJ Stroud. Stroud is better within structure, and he hasn't had a great O-line either. None of these quarterbacks have. But he can win consistently with the pocket. It's what Young does as a creator, extending with that instinct. And for a quarterback that's small, he has great pocket awareness and is able to evade pressure. The moment, I'm telling you, the moment he gets number one wide receiver, I think he's easily going to become one of the better quarterbacks in the league like that.
Knowing that Cincinnati has already vocally said that they do not plan on bringing back T. Higgins, and I'm not going to say Cincinnati, but from reports that have come out, basically have said that the Bengals, it's T. Higgins are not in the long-term plans. Should the Panthers go all in and offer T. Higgins whatever he wants so he can be the number one wide receiver within that offense?
It's tough because they didn't get the first round pick this year. I love the idea and I would do it. But man, if I'm going to get my first round pick, I'd almost rather take that wide receiver another year in the draft. But it's tough to say because when you're picking out to the top 30, you're taking the fourth or fifth best wide receiver of the day. T. Higgins to the Panthers from the Bengals. I like it, but I still wonder if he is that true top 10. I know he's in borderline number one, but can he be that consistent separator in the short to intermediate space? That guy who's just that damn good, you can't stop him week in and week out. We still got to see.
I think T. Higgins is that good. I think he is that good, John. Listen, Monday Night Football recap. This was it for us, the Joe Moran Show, featuring John Tortorelli. Thank you for being on. One last thing before you go. What do you make of the best division in football, the NFC South? 3-2-0 teams. Who would have saw this coming?
Not even close.
That's going to do it for us. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys drop a like on this episode. And if you guys like listening to the audio versions of episodes, then this will be out on Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcast. But this is going to do it for us. Make sure you drop a like. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.